Good morning, everyone, and welcome to UUSF Forum. And my name is Jeff Peckrell. I am the chairperson of the committee, also a member of the Human Rights Working Group. And we start the meeting with just a few procedural things and announcements about upcoming meetings. So we don't have a forum next weekend because the auction is taking place. So this room will be a hub of activity for the auction. And the next event that the Human Rights Working Group is sponsoring is a showing of the Oscar-winning documentary No Other Land. That'll be happening on Saturday the 8th of November in this room from noon to 3. We have a lunch and a discussion after that film. It's free with a $15 suggested donation at the door to cover the lunch. So I hope you can come to that. And then the Saturday after that, I believe it's November 12th, we'll have forum. We have Psycat Chakrabarti, who is running for the seat currently held by Nancy Pelosi in Congress. So that should be an interesting talk. We can get some different perspectives on politics of the city and the nation from someone who's challenging Nancy Pelosi. And then the week after that, in mid-November, we have, let's see. Dolores, who do we have coming in? Never mind. All right, so that's it for announcements. And the format of today's forum is like the following. So Bruce Clements will be interviewing Athena Papadakos about last night's play, Hansel and Gretel. Is that what it was called? I'd missed it myself. I'm sorry to say that, but yeah, and then we'll have a long Q&A session, so everyone is invited to ask questions about the analysis presented by Athena and Bruce. So that's it for announcements, and we'll just do our alumni land recognition and turn it over to Bruce. Thank you.
We, the members of the First Unitarian Universalist Society of San Francisco, acknowledge the Ramaytush Ohlone people who are the ancestral custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples, past, present, and future, who call this place, the land our society rests upon, their home. We are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We recognize that as the original stewards of this land, the Ohlone and many other indigenous peoples have understood the interconnectedness of all life and maintained harmony with all of nature for millennia. Thank you.
On our way here, Carol Fleming and I were laughing in the cab about what you learn at the end of your life. And I suggested to her that the big things were sex and money. And then we laughed about the fact that here we were, university people. And I was sitting in the back of the cab and saying, well, it's all about sex and money. And it was funny because so much of it is about sex and money, first of all. But also because it is also about the stories we tell about ourselves. Those who are in the dating business of getting a date and getting another date and looking for Miss Right or Mr. Right. We have stories, and I dare say if I were in the dating game, there would be 2 or 3 or 4 stories that I would tell. And I would tell that my potential life partner sitting across this strange table, I would tell them because I wanted them to know my parameters. This is what I take. This is what I don't take. This is what I'm ready to say. This is what I'm not ready to say. These are my values. Let me tell you the story of going to the store when I was 12 years old and how guilty I felt when I picked up that thing of gum and brought it back. And that story is really about, look at me, I've learned the lesson of honesty at 12 years old. That's who I am. And these stories that we tell about ourselves, not only for the other, but as a way of confirming who we are. So just to do a passing reference to yesterday's play, Hansel has an idea of the past and his role and where he came from, and he is determined that the world will know that story. It has practical effects. If I am this person and the world knows, they will treat me as they should treat me, and as a way of advertising my virtues. I am good, and watch out for me. Don't cross this line. Uh, and so the joy of this morning is not the memory of the play, but having Athena here, because she is in the people tell their stories to them business. Now, let me ask her, is that the business she's in?
Thank you, Bruce. Yes, if you can hear me, I would say, yes, that is the business that I'm in, and that many therapists, retired and active here, and ministers are in this business of telling stories like you as
Okay,
a playwright.
So let me ask, let's
Yes.
get started, right? How do you know when you're in the room with another person, it's simply the two of you, and that person is telling you a story? Two things. How do you know that it's true? And is it important that it's true?
That's a great question, Bruce. And I would say that when I'm in the room with someone, because most of the time I do not know them or their past history so well, what they're sharing with me, I take at face value as their truth. And I'll put it this way, their current truth and experience of what might have happened to them as a child, what they remember about it, how they've used that experience to forge their current identity. And we kind of go from there.
So how do you know? How do you move a person's story from their traditional liturgy that they always tell to some more thorough, some more accurate version?
Another great question. And I want to refer back to your wonderful play last night. And I do want to say, if you didn't have the opportunity to enjoy Bruce's play last night, it was a very rich play about two characters, Hansel versus Gretel, and their shared different experiences about what happened. So in my work, I don't know if Hansel or Gretel is arriving in my office. And I don't know what the truth is yet. I don't know if I'll ever know the truth. But if Hansel came to my office, and in our play last night, your wonderful play, you were very compassionate towards both characters, Hansel and Gretel, and all the characters. I appreciated your compassion towards each one of them. Hansel was very much wrapped up in the idea that that witch who caged him and tortured him and was trying to fatten him up and eat him up. Hansel said, I can't quite go with that story. I don't want to believe how bad that whole experience was. He wasn't saying that. I would be hearing this as a therapist. Wait, so you met a woman in the forest and she put you in a cage and and she fattened you up for a couple of months and said she'd eat you, but you're saying now that she was a wonderful benefactress, I'd start to have some questions about Hansel's telling of the story. Now, if Gretel came into my office and said, "Oh my gosh, when I was 6 years old, my brother and I were taken into the woods by our father and abandoned. It was terrible. We were afraid the bears would get us, but we wandered into this old woman's house and oh no, she trapped my brother who was 8 in this cage and she tried to fatten him up. And here I was, 6 years old, and I'm doing all these chores for this terrible, mean woman who wants to eat my brother. So, Gretel, I would say, oh, okay, Gretel, we're on the right track here. You're telling me about some terrible things and how hard it was and how you coped over the years. So I think I do, pretty much believe Gretel. But I don't know what the truth is. So my inquiry would be of then, Gretel, how has this impacted you in your life? Do you wander into other people's homes these days or not? Do you like a slim diet? Are you on a keto diet? Yes, anyway.
And how much do you trust that what she tells you is actually the case? And how important is that? I mean, I ask the question because I think probably there are stories I tell about myself which are utterly untrue. That my brother would say, "What?" to that, but which every time I tell them make me root me a little bit more, or root me in this situation. Um, so how important is it that the story we tell about ourselves is in fact true? To you as a therapist, as someone who wants growth and wants grounding for the people you're working with, how important is the veracity of the person, and how important at the same time is the reason that you understand they are sitting there telling you that story rather than some other story?
I would say that what matters most is not even so much the veracity and the actual facts, but the meaning the person's making out of the facts they're sharing with me or their perspective on the facts, their experience. So, how do they understand it? How did they emotionally respond to those facts? And how does that live within them today? And how has it lived with them in terms of rooting their identity, shaping their identity? How is that story living today in their body, their heart, their mind? And the facts, I would say, aren't as important as the meaning they're making of the facts they're able to share with me. I don't want to take it too politically, but we could say in our current political world, our president is a man who denies a lot of facts, but he also doesn't make deep meaning out of his facts. He sticks to a few preferences like retribution, revenge. Like there's not much going on in terms of meaning making in that person's experience of what he's experienced in life. He's very limited and constrained.
How do you how do you encourage me?
Yes. Hmm.
How do you encourage me to come back the next week and say to you, it wasn't exactly that way? Or, how do you help me to move to a more true and to a more helpful understanding of my past?
I think, again, using maybe the characters of Hansel and Gretel coming in for treatment, for therapy. If Hansel were to come in and say, um, when I was 8, my sister was 6, this thing happened. My sister, Gretel, remembers it as this terrible old witch who was going to fatten me up. She kept me in a cage and she was going to eat me. And then, fortunately, my heroic sister, Gretel, pushed her into an oven, cooked her, and we robbed her. And the story goes, and we took the wealth from her home, gold and pearls and diamonds, and we took it to our father back at his house. And this is how our family wealth was created. And Hansel, let's say he's in therapy for a few sessions, and he says, but my recollection is that, yeah, my dad brought us into the woods and abandoned us, but we found this nice old lady and she helped us out. Unfortunately, she had an accident in her oven. And after that, we decided she gave us her family jewels and wealth, and we brought that home to our father. So what I might do with Hansel is start gently supporting his version of the story and also how I might gently start prodding with, boy, that must have been scary if you were locked in a cage. What was that like for you? And he would share with me maybe a bit about what that was like. And I might either just go along with that. Oh, it was fine to be locked up in a cage. Okay, well, maybe not go there today, but maybe start saying, I was so scared. It was, and I would go with that and soften it, amplify it, support it, protect him. Talk about how protective his whole body was and nervous system was during that terrible time. I want to support how self-protective it is for Hansel to shape his story about what happened, the way he's shaping it. Versus Gretel. Gretel wants to share the story. I was empowered to push the witch into the oven. I have agency in the world. I'm strong. I will protect my brother. I will protect me. I'll take care of this. I'll do whatever it takes. That's me. I'm Gretel. And
One of the differences between life and story, and I think one of the reasons I write is that I don't like the world. It's messy. The story never ends. The challenges just go on and on and on. Nothing is as clearly defined as it should be. My own power is constantly being questioned and undermined, not just by the world, but by myself. Um, and how important is it from your point of view when you said to someone who's been with you for an hour, they go out, what do you want? How do you arm them to not be destroyed by things they don't want to remember and don't want to know? I mean, how do you arm people? How do you help them to have the courage to come back the next week, in spite of the fact that they may be telling part of the story that they really don't want to know?
I just want to take a pause at how powerful and profound that question is. You just shared with us your personal experience, which I can identify with, about how hard the world is, how painful, how scary. I mean, we just had our big marches yesterday across the country, no king's marches. And here we are in beautiful San Francisco, and our president says, we're going to send troops in. Oh, okay. Next, what are we going to do, Gavin Newsom? And Mayor Lurie? So when people come into the therapy session and they're bringing all of this truth in, the big picture experience, the personal lives experience, this question of in our hour together, this work we do together, I think a big question is, what will you take from this experience and how will you use it out there to feel stronger, to be more protected, to feel more agency? So this is what I would do in a session, is I would talk with you about what we just talked about, how hard this world is, how unpredictable it is, and the challenges that come up. And then I'd probably also check in with you and ask, what is it like talking with me about these experiences and not being alone with all of this and being able to be with other people with the pain and the suffering?
So the world is, I'm
Go for it.
jumping here.
Yeah,
I mean, the world is the theater before the audience, before whom I play my show, the Bruce Clements show. Right? I play my Bruce Clements show for. So what is it that enables me to stop doing nothing but the Bruce Clements show? Right?
Okay, I'm not sure I want the Bruce Clemens show to stop, so I don't know. I'm not. I like the Bruce Clemens show. But what are you saying? Like it's too much Bruce Clemens? You want to bring in some other people? I mean, I'm not sure. Maybe a little bit earlier we were speaking about despair. If things are so hard, how do we leave a therapy session and go out in the world and deal with things? But I think your Bruce Clemens show is a great, wonderful source of nurturance and support. For example, we had this wonderful play last night. So I don't want that to soften or go away. I want more of that.
Well, I mean, and to
Hmm.
can you still hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm coming now to feel the blurring of the line between what is the Bruce Clemens show and what is this guy. And to feel that the performance is also the person. I'm thinking now about helping someone to agency, to a sense of independence, and to what extent is it your job to help me move together performance and person? Is there an extent to which I don't want to say that's the goal, but that's something in your therapeutic consciousness, allowing a person to be himself and to be the performer that is this person in the world.
Yes. So I would say yes. I said maybe I would say more of my work is about helping you invite each part of yourself. We could think about ourselves in parts, like there's a Hansel part inside of me and a Gretel part inside of me. There's a Gretel part that's agentic and active and maybe fearless or counterphobic to scary things. And I also have a Hansel part that is so scared at times and feels trapped in a cage and I can't move and I'm angry because I can't figure out what to do. So I would invite a patient or a friend or my spouse to contemplate the different parts of ourselves and to begin to invite them in for dialogue and energy around acting in the world and bringing everybody to the buffet or the banquet table for a round circle conversation and gathering. And as we go out into the world, I want to bring everybody with me. Does that
No,
help?
I don't understand.
No.
Say it again, please. Everybody else understands, but I don't.
Which part do you want me to repeat? The whole thing? No, right. Which part?
You could go for that. Yeah.
Okay. So one of the ways in therapy these days, we're really helping people bring different parts of themselves to consciousness and to an experience they're having. And I think it's actually really important what we're this kind of therapy because I think it's been helpful for America at large, and I'll explain why, given our history. There's a kind of therapy. It's called internal family systems, internal family therapy. And what it means is that we could imagine in our mind multiple people as aspects of ourselves. So here I am, Athena, speaking with you as a psychologist and a fan of the theater and a fan of Bruce. And I'm also a mom and I'm a wife and I'm a sister and a cousin. I'm a grand aunt right now. I have a 2-month-old grand niece and I'm very excited. And I have all these roles in my life. And here at our wonderful church, I'm on the flower committee and part of SCW, the Society for Community Work. So all these parts of me come along with me to the forum. And to the extent that I can think about all these parts of me and showing up in a fun way and hopefully interesting way and a engaged community way, that allows me to be here. But if I were to take parts of me and push them down and say, you can't come to the forum with me today, you're too rowdy, you were in a march yesterday with some outrageous signs, you can't come into the forum as a rebel, then I would keep that energy out of the room, and that's not a good thing. Does that help?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now, I wonder about those of us in this room. And I wonder if it would be useful from your point of view to separate two things, story and set. And if it would be useful to you and to me to think not only about our actions and the actions performed on us, but also about the setting that we find proper for the presentation of ourselves. And I wonder if for some of us at least, there is a stage set, not necessarily the house you grew up in, not necessarily the geography, but if there is a sense of place, and if a key question in that sense of place is security. So, for example, to put it in theatrical terms, how is your past lit? When we were working on the show, Ralph Fenn and I spent some time buying floor lamps. And we bought 4, and 3 of them worked, and we had enough bulbs for 2. So there we were. And we have these, I think they may still be there. And the point was to have a section of the world to which the audience was exposed in a certain modulated light. So that the audience, without necessarily being conscious of the importance of it, and without necessarily knowing the importance myself, when I looked at it, I said, yes, these lamps lend a sense of variety to the world of these people, and I want that sense. So we put the lights there, and we turned them on. So what I'm thinking about is not just the house you lived in, but how it was lit in your mind. Does that make sense to you? Do you think of how your patients' worlds are lit?
Well, I love speaking with you, Bruce, because as a playwright, I'm thinking, oh, what a great way to think about my patients' lives. As how were they lit? I usually am curious about how they were loved and how that love was light, or if there was no love, there was darkness. So I'm thinking of how were they loved? But the metaphor of how were they lit, I think is a beautiful and apt one. Was the sun shining and was there natural light, or were the shades drawn and it was dark and an occasional dim lamp was lit?
Yeah.
That's a great question, Bruce.
And I think that is, we have the image and the experience, for goodness sake, the experience as children of dark places. The closet you always want closed, right? I can't close that closet door. Why? Close that closet door. Please close that closet door. So you are in a world in which the threats to you of death, which the threat of death, which you are driven to life and afraid of death, the extent to which that gets projected on dark spaces or light spaces, and to what extent is the sense of light in your past decisive or important?
So I think, again, another powerful question. I'm actually going to answer it through a bit of research in terms of what the research says about how do our early childhood experiences impact and shape our adult experiences. And what does the science say about that? And out of our glorious CDC, which is being destroyed at this point, the CDC in 1996 published a study which has shaped the United States and the whole world, the United Nations, in terms of how do we help people have better lives, which is that the CDC said when terrible things happen to children, there's a child abuse, child neglect, child exploitation, or parents abandon their children willfully, maybe through divorce or running off somewhere and leaving the children, or I would say not people who divorce their children are not abandoning their kids, but there's a sense when a family breaks up and the children might be going back and forth between homes, there's some sense of children have to navigate a complex situation there. But if parents are incarcerated when children are young, that can impact them too. I just want to quickly share how Clarence Thomas and his early childhood experiences are probably impacting his adult world. Is that okay? Do you want to hear about Clarence Thomas? Yeah, so there is a Netflix special, which is, excuse me, a biography of Clarence Thomas. And if you watch that, you'll hear from Clarence Thomas, who we all know is kind of a known liar at this point, right? He says he likes to do things like get in his RV and go camping in the Walmart parking lot. And you think, ooh, that's a crazy thing to say, Mr. Supreme Court Justice. Well, what is Clarence Thomas's childhood like? Well, his mother, he has a brother, I think, maybe, I don't know if it's an older or younger brother, but in this Netflix documentary, you'll hear that his mother, who had problems with addiction, which is probably related to her early childhood painful experiences, she at some point could not take care of Clarence Thomas and his brother, so she dropped them off with her father, Clarence Thomas's grandfather, who, as an older person at that point, wasn't really equipped to deal with the high energy of two young boys, probably 8 and 10, or maybe it was 10 and 12. And what the grandfather did to these two boys is to discipline them. From the Netflix special, we hear he beat them, he whipped them, he locked them in closets. And in this description of torture of him and his brother, we hear the grandfather also sent them to better schools than they had gone to before to get a better education. So you've got young Clarence being dropped off by mom at his grandpa's. He gets whipped, tortured, beaten, locked in a closet, but he gets to go to good schools. That's nice. But what does he do? He grows up with a sense of anger, retribution, a wish for revenge, and he's seeking today to, I think, get back at his grandfather for torturing him and locking him in the closet. I don't know how else to explain his current behavior. If you have a better rationale, let me know. But I think that we can see that people's early childhood experiences impact their adult experiences, and healthy governments and the United Nations support reducing poverty and supporting communities, healthy communities, so we can have as many children as possible and families growing up in communities of love, of enough economic support, of enough stability, of enough kindness, warmth, and community. And without that, I mean, this is why when they say when there's the bombing in Gaza, you're going to have more terrorists coming up, because you got a lot of people who are displaced at this point who've experienced horrific, terrible things. And we don't know if you're going to be able to repair that before the next round of young people seeking retribution rise. That is a little dark. Did I go too dark with that? Okay,
So
sorry.
now I want to, I'm trying to, I want us all to walk out of here knowing something or ready to do something. And the question that occurs to me for those guys is, what in your life was a window? What moment, or was there a moment in your life when you met someone to whom you said, about whom you thought, this is a window. This person I can be brave with. I won't have to be all that brave and still can share. I mean, you're in the business in some ways of being that window, right? The safe place, the non-judgmental window, when I think about my own life, it has been for happily, full of people who were windows for me. You know, I felt this person came along. My house is bigger. I've got, a window's been cut, and so I'm wondering. I'm wanting, please, for you to think about. We'll just be quiet for a minute, to think about a person or even a setting in which you felt, here I can tell a truer story. Uh, uh, I was walking, when I was doing graduate work, I was in a building. I was walking down the hall, and one of my teachers came by, and he said, "How are you?" And I said, "Fine." And I felt his hand on my arm, and he looked at me and he said, "Someday I will ask you that question, and you will tell me the truth." Which was, I mean, for me, of course, shaking. And of course, it was absolutely right. I wasn't fine or not fine. Someday I will ask you that question and you'll tell me the truth. And so I'm looking for you to think about, not necessarily to tell the world about, but to think about a person or even a setting or a circumstance which enabled you to feel, however briefly, with what exhilaration, here I could tell a little more. Here my story would be more interesting because more true. So let's take just a minute, and I'm asking you, let me be very specific here. I'm asking you to think in this quiet to come about the person, the setting, the place where you felt, here I can tell more of my story. Is that what falling in love is? That you look at the other person and you say, here I could tell it. Not all of it, never all of it, but more of it. And maybe you will take the mic around. The you know, story is always about detail. It's not about grand ideas. It's not about convincing somebody of something. It's about details like our lives. It's about details. And if, when Athena goes around, you simply said the name of this person for whom you would be, for whom you were more ready to tell your story. Or the place. I think about an alley 3 blocks long that ran from my aunt's house to the High's ice cream store, by people's backyards, where I felt alone and free, and I could at least tell myself the story as it really was. So if you have a person to name, or a place to name, or some moment when you were enabled to feel, I could tell it better. I could tell it more completely with this person, or in this place, or this setting than anywhere else.
So I think my story with my family really came out with adult children of alcoholics. And that in that group setting, in a group setting, I felt very free, not just free, but what's the right word? Encouraged. And I had to do it. I had to talk at that point. Thank you.
And this having to it's more an invitation than an order. Yes? Okay, that's complicated. I'm sorry. So I asked you the question and then took the microphone away from you. Ha ha ha. Yes, let's hear a little bit more from you.
The had to comes from within, and it also comes from facing situations that felt really very difficult, very challenging. And that was when the part of me that Athena was talking about that really had to emerge, the different parts of me. And growing up in an alcoholic family, but a brilliant family, but still alcoholic, has certain characteristics, personality characteristics that I truly resonated with. And so that was very helpful.
Ah, ah.
The setting is the woods across the street from our house. It was large woods, and there was. Can you hear me? Okay, so there was. My sister and I went over there, and there was an area that had a tree in it, and it was sort of like a little house or a room. That it just happened to be that way, and so we played in that, and. If you climbed high, you could almost see the lights from New York City. And the warmth of my sister and the interaction and the love and the role playing and the fantasy. And I found and I was 6 and she was 8. I found an old axe in there and I chopped a tree, and it was a big tree, and I chopped and chopped, and every day we went back and chopped and ate candy and chopped, and then eventually the tree fell down the cliff and I was a frontiersman. She also dressed us up in ragged clothes and we went around the neighborhood and said, "Happy George Washington's birthday." And then a quizzical, woman in an apron would look down at us, and then she'd turn around and she'd hustle down the hall, and then she would come back and we'd hold up bags and she'd put candy in them. And then we'd go back out to our house and eat the candy and chop the tree. So anyway, it was grand to have the support of a lovely, sensitive sister that loved me, that loves me.
Thank you for sharing that, Ron. And I do want to add too, Ron was in our cast last night of Hansel versus Gretel. You were wonderful. And thank you for sharing your experiences.
Thank you, Bruce. I think what you just brought up is really, people can identify with it, but a lot of people, rather than talk to a special person, especially when they get older and they have all these stories, that's what causes people to write their own stories down, to document certain things that happened in their life, that most of it, I don't know, with me anyway, it's not the happiest stuff, you write things that really had a big impact on you. And sometimes it wasn't a good impact, but it made you think. Because if you go through life and everybody's nice and you have a wonderful childhood and blah, blah, I mean, you can turn out to be kind of boring too, And so I think that what you're talking about is what ignites some people to document what they've been through and to write it down, and so that a lot of people read it. And I think it's interesting what you're talking about here. Thank you.
And what is happening while you're telling it is that you're remembering things. I mean, the story you tell is richer than you knew it was until you started telling it.
I think for me, the support to be myself is about acceptance. And I feel that in our men's group here at the church.
Thanks, Ralph. Anyone else like to share? Yeah.
I'm very fortunate to have been part of a women's group that's been meeting together for over 20 years. And we have a space with us that feels like you can say anything and you'll still be loved. And you can explore things that maybe you wouldn't elsewhere. And I feel like it's made me more able to do that in other places and find the safe places to be truly open. And I just feel very fortunate.
I think we need to bring this to a close, do we? I mean, I don't want to. Okay. How long? Okay.
Therapy.
No, I want to ask another question. There is a biblical cliche, and the biblical cliche is, "You shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free." And it appeals to virtually everything in me, at least, that is hopeful and eager, energetic. You shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free. And I'm beginning to wonder if that is true. And if it is not more true, and I want to ask this of you, Athena, is it possible that the truth you devise about yourself and live day to day, whether it is based on a story of yourself which is accurate or not, is my story accurate or not, is not perhaps the question, but the question is something else, and I don't know what I don't know what that question is, but I am at a point in my life in which I have stopped believing that simply to know the truth is going to, in decisive ways, set me free. The Hansel and Gretel play was really very much in my mind, and what's in the playwright's mind doesn't matter really. But in my mind was about that question. And there was a scene which I cut from the play. There were a lot of scenes cut from that play in which Gretel pays tribute to Hansel and pays tribute to his fiction. She says to him in effect, Hansel, you were right. You were right to deny what happened. You were right to build this fiction, which you yourself then began immediately to believe in, that the fiction about your life enabled you to do what you did and to be what you are. And that fiction is more important than fact. I don't know why a lot of scenes got cut from this show. I don't know why that got cut. Now I regret it. I regret it because I wanted to hear Gretel pay that tribute to her brother. So, Athena, anyone, to what extent is your story about yourself more important, more useful not only to you, but to other people, that the fiction you write about yourself serves the world in a way that the truth would not?
Well, maybe I could just say a word. I was responding to the previous question, and the thing that when you guys were talking previously about the defining experience, whatever, I immediately thought of something that happened to me in 1973 when I was working in the fields and I was living in a little place where mainly farm workers were living, and I got to know a couple of people in that place, Alfonso and Dolores. I still remember them. Anyway, without making this too long a story here, what I came to understand after working in the fields like 3 years was the cultural difference between campesino Mexicanos, or farm worker Mexicans, and the culture that I grew up in, which was middle class Jewish, right? And what I really appreciated about the Mexican culture was acceptance, that everyone was accepted for who they were. I mean, there's a joke that goes around about, for the Jewish family, when does a fetus become viable? And then the punchline is when it graduates medical school, But and if you told that joke about Mexicans, it would be, what? What are you talking about? So it sort of says something about the difference in the culture, and I really appreciated that that cultural thing of, you don't have to have a status, quote unquote, in order to be accepted as a human being, and it really was something that really influenced me and has influenced me my whole life since that time, particularly. So anyway, I just thought I'd say that. So.
Yeah, and the history of us all. I mean, we have two histories. We have our, my history, your history, right? But we also have.
Tell me when I should speak.
The history we share with everybody, struggling against a hostile world. We all did this. We all do this every day, holding on to our lives against all comers and regardless of its pain and its difficulties. That our common will to survive, our common will, desire to make sense of it all, we're all sitting in this room. And when we got up this morning and started to put our clothes on, we were starting to make sense of the world all over again. Where are you going? When will you get there? Who you will see? What do you expect? What will you bring? We all have this implicit in us. So our history, just as human beings on the planet, which makes us brothers and sisters in this fundamental way, we all have that history. Perhaps what troubles all of us is that we forget that and we don't know it, and so we kill each other. End of remark.
Well, what happened to me recently is I discovered the field of consciousness. Now, the way we're talking here doesn't look at to what is doing the talking, what is consciousness. If we think of it that we are trying to investigate something about ourselves, we would be in some ways the worst to investigate. Consciousness itself is driving us in ways that we don't understand because we're not reflecting back on what that is, in fact. So that drove me then to try to get up beyond consciousness, and it forced me to start studying a subject I don't understand, quantum mechanics. But there we enter a whole world that is free from determinism, free from cause and effect, that describes reality in ways that you can almost liberate yourself from your own consciousness, trying to understand something that you can't understand. And then that drives you more into the Eastern religions, etc. But as long as we are trying to talk about it in a way we are, we're subject to rules of consciousness and what it is without even knowing about it.
So my mother-in-law let my wife stay at a party for a long time once because she said, I want to go to stay at the party. You make me leave. I don't want to leave. I love it. And my mother-in-law told my wife, leave a party when it's really great and you can't imagine leaving it. So I want to leave this party. I want to direct your attention at the end of the party back to the fact that you don't need to know it all, and that you're protecting yourself in very good ways by not knowing. And if in the world there are places, which I think this church is one, there are places where you can, and people with whom you can open the window a little. Just knowing that and remembering that is big, big, big. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bruce. And amen. Thank you.